In the U.S., Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth has called a rare meeting of hundreds of senior generals and admirals stationed around the world. They'll gather today at a base near Washington. The Pentagon has not publicly said why they are meeting, and even the generals haven't been given a reason. President Trump is among those due to speak to the assembled offices on a day that a government shutdown looms, raising fears of a mass purge by the administration. The U.S. military has the biggest footprint worldwide. Soldiers, ships, and planes deployed all over the globe, all part of a record projected $1 trillion budget for next year. That footprint includes over 750 bases spread from one end of the world to the other, 120 bases in Japan alone, followed closely by Germany and South Korea, spanning Greenland to Australia. Now, the generals who command all those bases are due in Quantico, Virginia, a massive logistical exercise. There are over 800 generals spread across the Army, Navy, and Air Force, Marines, and other services. 44 of them are at the top 4-star ranking. Some of these generals command thousands of troops. It's not clear why they and their senior staff are being ordered out of potential hotspots. U.S. President Donald Trump and Vice President J.D. Vance didn't add any clarity in a recent press conference.
Why is he there as well? What is it? Well, I'll be there if they want me. But why is that such a big deal? I mean, he's the fact that we're getting along with the generals and admirals from all. Remember, I'm the president of peace. It's good to get along. It's good. You act like this is a bad thing. Isn't it nice that people are coming from all over the world to be with us? It's not particularly unusual that generals who report to the Secretary of War and then to the President of the United States are coming to speak with the Secretary of War. It's actually not unusual at all, and I think it's odd that you guys have made it into such a big story.
Earlier this year, Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth purged several of the most senior officers, including the head of the Joint Chiefs of Staff and the first woman to command the Navy. He said he wants to cut 20% of senior officers and reorganize command structures.
And he said he wants to redefine how the U.S. fights with you and your team. War must not become a mere tool for global social work. Eager to risk American blood and treasure for utopian fever dreams, we should hit hard, wreak vengeance, and return home.
It all comes as the U.S. has signaled that it wants to withdraw from internationalism and collective defense, turning America's vision increasingly inward.
Now let's try and unpack this with W correspondent Misha Kodowski, who is standing by in Quantico, Virginia, where this meeting of top brass is being held. Now, Misha, any signs of what's actually on the agenda, or people still in the dark?
Well, Guard, I wish I had a clear answer here, but right now there is more we don't know about this meeting than we do, and I can say for sure that we've never seen such a meeting before. Hundreds of top officers from 4 stars down, all summoned to Quantico, and no one seems to know why. And senior leaders and staffers have been told to show up as well. They're coming from major commands. Yuccom in the region of Russia's war in Ukraine, CENTCOM, which oversees obviously the Middle East and others, and not just the generals and admirals, but also their advisors and staff. So we are talking about hundreds and hundreds of people here, and that's an enormous concentration of U.S. military leadership in one place, raising obvious security concerns here. Speculations are swirling too here as well. Possible job cuts, command consolidations, even rumors of new oath, though nothing credible confirms that. Defense Secretary or War Secretary Pete Hegseth is set to deliver a speech here this morning in just about 15 minutes reportedly about the warrior ethos he envisions for the U.S. Army and for the U.S. military. We know that he vowed to make America lethal again, the same way as President Trump vowed to make America great again. And President Trump himself will address the officers we've just seen, the presidential limousine known as the Beast arriving at the Quantico base ahead of today's meeting.
Now, are commanders assembled there treating this as rather routine, or are they fearing something bigger? Well, when the Pentagon was asked directly, Gart, what's the purpose of this meeting? All they had to say was, it's just a meeting and that's where things stand right now. Vice President J.D. Vance, as we just heard, found it odd that, I quote, reporters had made it into such a big story. He said it's not unusual that the leaders would come for a visit with the secretary at the place that serves as both an educational hub and a key military base. But what's unprecedented here is the presence of the United States President, and as I said, we are expecting him to deliver a speech in just about 30 minutes. DW correspondent Misha Kadovsky in Quantico, Virginia. Thank you, Misha. For more now, I'm joined by Carrie A. Lee from the German Marshall Fund. Miss Lee, it's good to have you with us. Let me just ask you, what did you make of this speech today? I mean, we just saw an excerpt there, you know, no beards and make sure you're not overweight. The speech that Hexef gave, first of all, thank you for having me.
The speech that Hexef gave really is not news. He's been giving some variation of the same speech since he entered office in January. This has been a kind of obsession of the secretaries with the kind of woke military DEI policies, branching in and kind of lumping in a lot of the policies that were implemented both under the first Trump administration as well as in the Biden administration, around things like shaving profiles, ponytails for women, other types of grooming standards. So it's not, what I make of it is that it's not a lot of new news. It's the things that we've been hearing out of the Secretary's office for the last 8 months.
And why would a U.S. Defense Secretary make all of these top generals fly in for such a short meeting? I was reading earlier today that, you know, he could have easily put this message in an email.
That's a terrific question, and one that I was asking my colleagues last week myself. I was somewhat optimistic and thought that it was going to be a major policy announcement when it was first announced last week, whether it was the new national defense strategy or something regarding funding levels and changes to force structure, with regards to the upcoming shutdown, or, you know, potential discussions about real personnel policy and the changes that have been made for kind of massive changes to personnel, including the General Officer Corps. But what we heard from the Secretary of Defense, at least, was much more of what many of those officers in that room had already heard through a variety of speeches that had already been given to their troops.
So, do you think anything's going to change? I mean, are there consequences for the U.S. military from this speech?
I think that it is a good indication of what the Secretary really values, which is optics, public relations, and how things kind of look and play on television. Bringing in, you know, hundreds of general and admirals and flag officers from across the world. It's not just a security threat at Quantico, right? But it's a security threat to the United States. Decision-making process, particularly on the eve of a potential government shutdown, where senior military officers really should be making big decisions about who stays and who goes, what civilians are going to be furloughed, what types of responsibilities senior, not just senior, but military officers and enlisted folks are going to be responsible for when appropriations lapse at midnight. All of these things are decisions that commanders need to be making, and, you know, they need to be on the ground at their combatant commands and at their level relative command posts in order to make decisions about new threats. But they were at Quantico today because the Secretary of Defense cares about grooming standards.
Okay. Well, we will see what happens in the future. We can imagine that there will be some clean-shaven generals and admirals to see in the future. That is for sure.